Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, your weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Matthias.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I are Nobel Prize-winning writers, 1,000 years into the future, but we've been unstuck in time, lost our skill in writing, and need to get back on that level to get back to our home time period.
Exactly. So, to aid us in doing that, we've decided to do a challenge. Each week we set a timer. Our goal is to write a complete short story using 3 of 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read the stories, we talk about what we learned in writing them, and then we talk about stories sent in by you listeners.
Exactly. We're simply here to help you do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
A Doof Media production.
Ooh. Stuck the landing. And to help us get back to our skill level so we can go back to our future time period, we're joined by the other lovely college boy. It's going to be 3 college boys this episode. Clarence Brooks from episode 30, if anyone remembers that. That was a whole 20 episodes ago. Jesus. This is episode 50.
How are you
my
doing?
God.
Oh, grand. You know, it's raining. It's actually, it's kind of funny because it's like storming outside, and that was one of the words.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. My story is about
Inspiring.
a storm.
My story involves storms.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Ooh.
It's almost like we were inspired by the same words.
That's crazy.
That's right. So, for those future listeners, in our home time period or whatever, we are in the time of the coronavirus, which for podcasters doesn't mean much, except that, I don't know. Yeah. Are people listening less? I think I asked this question on the episode before. Are people listening less because they're not driving, or are they listening more because they're cleaning their house more? That's
Actually,
the question.
I've been thinking, right? And I'm positive people are listening more because I've noticed, right, being home, after doing everything that you want to do for like a week, you start doing things that you want to do but have never really had the time to do, which would be a podcast, a hour to about 2 hours to sit and possibly do nothing and listen to a couple of dudes talk.
Really? Well, our download numbers are down 20%, so...
Oh, well.
It's okay. It's all,
who knows?
It's
Who
all
knows?
nothing. It's fine.
Maybe
Anyway.
it's us.
Maybe it's us. Do you think we've lost our luster, Jarvis?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've lost all of my wanderlust. So
okay, well, I'm really glad to have you on, Clarence, because I really loved your story last time. It was very poetic.
I'm so glad to be on.
Yes, and you should be on more often, especially since the audience will hopefully be hearing a lot more of you wink at the camera.
Yes,
but that's news for later.
Okay, you keep on winking at the camera, but there is no camera.
Yeah, that's why I have to say it. I'm narrating. I listened to this really great musical recently. It's 36 Questions. It's a podcast musical. It's great.
Yes.
Did you wait? Why do you sound like you've heard it? Did I tell you about it?
Well, because I've heard the first 10 minutes of it.
Oh, it's great.
But I have yet to finish it. But I really like the concept. Of it.
Listen through the second song, because the first song is too much too early. That's my quibble with it, because it's I was on a road trip and it's 3 people. I'm like, hey, I'm going to take a risk here. Hey, is it all right if we sit in silence and don't talk to each other and instead listen to this musical? And yes. And then the first song is super dramatic. And it's
yeah, it got...
Is it that musical that involves the wife lying to her husband about who she's been?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Which you learn in the first
nice.
10 minutes. It's
see, it's quite a lot to enter into.
Yes. And if you want to listen to that or just want to hear more about it, Media MD, another podcast on the network, did an episode about it at some point, and I echo all of their feelings. So if you want to just hear people talk about it, go listen to that episode. But okay, that's enough. Whatever this is, it's soft tangenting. Go stop listening to this podcast. Go listen to that one. It's only 3 hours long. Anyway, what words did you guys use? How was doing the right thing this week?
Doing the right thing this week was pretty good. I mean, as everyone knows, all of us just suddenly have a lot more free time.
Yes.
So sitting down to actually go and do the right thing was nice, because I was actually able to fully focus and not only do the right thing, but I don't know, do something I've been wanting to do for a while. So I found there's great benefit in being able to go nowhere.
Okay, good. Clarence?
Yeah, I realized how much I rely on not being interrupted when I write. And so now that I have to kind of like carve out particular times that I know I will not be. Now that there's like other residents in the same house as me.
Right.
So I kind of have to like figure out where my mind can sit by itself and like inhabit space that you know, can kind of like work my way into like writing.
Right.
Yeah, so now that there's like, you know, time unbound, I suppose, where it's like there aren't particular things that are taking me away from my space.
Yeah.
I can just kind of like sit and write for hours.
Are you able to do that? That's interesting.
Yes.
That sounds like a blessing.
Mostly.
So you've had more interruptions, but now that you've been carving out time, you have as much time as you want, I guess.
Yeah, well, I feel like the reason that I have been writing more is because I have not been doing other things that I should be doing.
Right.
But now that there's no, you know, immediate interface with other people.
There's no
in
rules.
person. They're like, yeah, there's not as much like guilt.
Right.
Of like, oh, I should be doing this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been really, really struggling with working from home, and I think, like, I mean, I want that to be what I can do, but it just does not work for me generally.
It's really hard.
Really hard,
Is it
especially because
you just continually get distracted, or
yeah. And my place is 2 rooms, right? There's a bedroom and it's a living room / kitchen, right? So it's the bedroom is the sleepy area, and it's also where my desktop is, and that's where all the fun games are. So it's like if I'm on that, I'm gonna click the games, right? Or just find an excuse to. And if I'm in the like my desk right now is the kitchen table, where it's like the TV is in front of me. I could turn that on. There's just stuff around me to clean. I could cook. I'm hungry, etc. And then so I just get into like a miasma of little tasks and stuff. And
it builds up over the course of the day.
Yeah, so and then I don't do anything, and I have assignments starting to get due next week. The good thing is, at least one of my classes has been like, "Hey, don't worry about it. If you don't want to do anything this week, you can get your points later. It's fine." Which is like,
that sounds like
wonderful.
a great class.
I really appreciate that. However, I'm not going to do anything. That's a lie. I will do something, but like it will be even harder to motivate myself now that there's not a hard deadline for that stuff. So
yeah.
I think that's like probably the best benefit is that a lot of our teachers are being more lenient.
Yeah. Yes, that's nice. Well, okay, that's enough. Enough tangenting part 2. What words did you guys use this week?
I did the magic of using all the words.
That's okay. Well, you didn't make a choice.
I didn't have to make a choice because I'm just that good.
You don't get extra points for that. just listeners, you don't get extra points for using all the words. Yeah,
I mean, really, what it kind of ended up being is that all of the words just found their way into the story, which is good. I mean, I'm glad that I didn't have to force any of the words in there. So,
yeah. Clarence, which ones did you use?
I think I left out garden.
Interesting.
So I used the other 3.
I found the garden to be one of the most evocative of the 3, so I thought that was interesting. Yeah. So I ended up I wrote my story and then realized I'd only used garden and Stormy, and so I just like went back in and add damage. I didn't even use damaged. I just used damage, which it was fine, but it worked out. And I think it actually improved that particular sentence that I inserted it in. So, but otherwise, let's just get right into it. We've lollygagged enough, right?
Quite a bit. All right,
yes, Jarvis. What do we need to know going into your story?
So this isn't really a sequel, should I say, but it is taking these same characters in a new setting as the story that I wrote for Do the Right Thing a while ago. I forgot what I titled it, but it involved this mountain named Mastodon and basically this forest filled with like mushroom vegetation.
Oh, yeah. Where they were doing magic and there was an old guy, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
So this is... I guess this takes place after the main character has done some studies, I guess. So, yeah, I guess that's all we really need to know going into it.
Okie doke. We'll go ahead and start, Travis.
All right.
And you can mute yourself, Clarence, if you want. I don't know if your microphone has a mute option, or if you just want to mute yourself on... Yeah, then that's fine.
Okay.
So the title of this one is Rite of Challenge. So many people are here, I uttered, as we made our way out of the valley dividing the brush of Ferrex, Shroom Garden, Shroom Grove, and the deep forest of lightning. Groups of people and lone travelers converge at the sylvan arch leading in to the deep forest. Its path, cobbled with stone and streamlining from the valley to the mountains. Macedon's mountain range hugged the coast, leading from the farthest south to the farthest north. The Goliath rock formations divide the 8 biomes and shield the inner lands from ravenous tidal waves and tempests. Past the valley's clearing, legions of people clutter the entrance to the Manzanilla portion of the deep forest, guarding the base of the mountain range. They're all here for the rites, Al-Shum. This will be the first of many oral traditions you'll witness. Al-Him spoke with a smile, looking back and stopping at the entrance to the forest to place a hand on an almost black tree trunk. Take a moment to feel where you are, Al-Shum. Even now, moments from her rites. The trees are engorged with Sky Bloom's pollutant. His eyes tracked up to the greenery of the manzanilla tree. Its branches reached out, far and straight, and on thick stems and in bundles of 30, shiny little deep green eggs hung low, like vines off its branches, and spurt the air with crisp oil that carried the aroma of a winery. His eyes were lost in it, and I will always remember this image. Al-Him was old, older than he cares to tell, but no matter the age, his body was kept up, and his pride in it led him to never wear a shirt or shoes, only a black and midnight blue worship robe that he fastened round his waist, along with a collection of skin ink paintings and rings that acted as his clothing. The wonder in his eyes faded, and he plucked 2 olives to toss one to me. The night prior, he insisted on traveling moonside, said the air was right for the rites, through a grin that let me know a valuable lesson was on the horizon. Along the trek, dark night turned to a glorious sunny morning, and all those we met along the journey spoke gleefully of the rites. By the look of it, whatever was happening a few feet into the forest was monumentous. There were peasants and knights and priests and scholars, all of which faced forward with little chatter in between. Without a doubt, Al-Him charted a path through the soup, landed us front row, yards from the arena. The clearing was quite beautiful. The forest's vegetation was thick, and round a large mound in the center 7 conduits, those who sacrificed their sanity and will to smoke of the herb sanctioned by Sky Bloom and channel her influence into sacred rituals and rites such as these. Hummed in unison and minded the border between onlookers and mound. 2 paces from where we stood, the line started, and upwards of 10 people waited patiently for their turn at the rites, each looking ever so longingly at the crowd that cheers for them, and the grim faces of the conduits in prayer. In the center of the mound, its size thrice what you would think, the grass leading up to its peak has withered away, not by age or footwork, but by the yellow and orange flower sitting upon it. There are many locations round the lands like this, Al-Shum, each one characterized by a bloom rosebud and a mound where the seed first touched down. Skybloom watches over all her lands, but in these places, her watch is ever present and focused. Conduits can chant her songs effortlessly, and a victory in these rites will bring the victor gifts from Bloom. Gifts of knowledge or fortitude. In a way, gifts of gold and silver, paper and cloth. See, in these places, her blessings are physical instead of the whispers or concepts you're used to receiving through study and prayer. As Alham found the words to his lecture, a young knight climbed the mound. Ah, here, watch. The Shirataki knight was little known in the lands I hail from, but here he's a sort of hometown hero, one you'd call upon to rid your fields of varmints and eradicate the gook from your gutters. He was a nice guy, short of words, but big in spirit. The only knight you wouldn't mind having round a bit longer than the job prescribes. Since the last I saw him, he'd taken extra effort into his wardrobe, his armor and footwear, and hat and sword, made all from the sturdy brown mushrooms that grow deep within Shroom Grove. In many ways, he looked similar to the mythical samurai my studies told me about, but not as polished, or crisp, or noble. As he made his way to the flower, the crowd cheered in excitement. The knight, taking a moment to raise his fist in the air to greet his onlookers, produced a small vial of a black gassy fluid from the folds of his armor. As the light caught it, Al-Him spoke up. Not anyone can conduct a rite. Each one needs a specific offering, more times than not, in the form of fertilizer of some sort. Since upwards of 10 people are lined up to give it a go, this would be a Lesir rite, or a rite with a low barrier to entry and fitting gifts. So the vial is probably a run-of-the-mill deep forest vegetation decomposed and spoken over by the coastal monks or a conduit. The Shirataki knight poured the fluid over the flower, the skybud itself swaying in the nutrient, growing deeper roots and a more heavenly hue. The knight pointed his sword towards the sky and exclaimed his right. I, Durhas Glover, proclaim the right of challenge against Skybloom on this day. Sis crack. The sound and flash of light seized the senses. And when the congregation came to, the Shirataki knight was slumped over, smoldering and dead. We all stood silent. Most bowed their heads in prayer for his soul's passing, and others snickered at the smell of shroom stew. There was something tangible in the air, like a sort of magnetism between objects and air. In line, those who wore heavy metal or decorative rings and jewelry quickly packed it up and placed it far from the arena, on the border leading to the woods. Lightning? From deep within the heavens, Al-Shum. Was his offering condemned? I asked Al-Him, off-put. by the calm of every onlooker. No, Al-Shum. His offering was good and his words articulated. That was the right. And, as you can see, Skybloom won. He gestured up to the skies past the mountains. It was clear in its clover color, not a stormy cloud nor blemish in its vastity. But why would she? Her ways are strange to our understanding. Yes, why would our God smite one of us? But why would we challenge our God for prizes? 2 questions, equally as important as the other. All we know is that if you challenge God, her gifts will be great, but her punishment will be harsh and absolute. The Shirataki knight finally stopped sizzling. The next in line saw this, climbed the mound, and kicked him off for the conduits to pray over. Those who fail the rites are disgraced, then prayed over. Alhim said with a grim tone, as if a final scolding from Skybloom, and a soothing salve after. The new person atop the mound wasn't as decorated as the knight, and was even younger and meek, but his eyes carried confidence, and the volumes tied to his belt told us he was a scholar. His robes were bright orange and yellow, with large cathedral rope wrapped around his waist and wrists. Alhim told me about the monks that reside along the coast about the other side of the mountain, but never have I heard of them sending fledglings out to conduct rites. His fist hit the air. Proclamation was quiet yet stern. I, Marcus Kuan, proclaim the right of challenge against Skybloom on this day. May her gifts be blessed, and her vengeance swift. Sizz, kafoom, crack. The second hit didn't blind as much. Through the days, I heard the crowd's commotion. Did he make it? Was there a second strike? And, as the color came back, the kid still stood there, motionless. From the sky, he brought his fist down and opened it for all to see. Her gift on this day was a golden yellow ring, forged like a lightning strike round the finger. He put it on, fit nicely, and threw his fist back in the air. A far weaker blast of lightning touched down on the ring, and a glorious glow came from its sparks and incited a cacophony of praise. Why did he not die? I asked, unsure of his methods. Because there are many chants and statuses one could put themselves under to make even the smite of God little more than a static shock. Would you like me to teach you, Al-Shum?
Fantastic story, Jarvis. I really love this dive back into this really fun and interesting and weird world. I think what really is the great part in this is how smoothly the exposition's handled.
Yeah.
There's like barely any times where I even like realized I was being expositioned at. Where it didn't feel natural, because you know you have a person who's unfamiliar with this stuff and then a person who is familiar with it. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty natural. Would you like to explain what happened in the story beforehand, just for context, for those that like Clarence didn't get that part?
Oh yeah. So in the previous story, this main character, who has since had his name changed, basically came from these lands on the other side of this really giant mountain.
Which was very like industrial. The lands he came from.
Yeah, very.
This is more about
very industrial. It's basically like a giant college, right, where they just study magic.
Oh, okay.
But as he crossed over, he basically met this person who is in touch with this basically new form of magic that's totally foreign to where he came from. So since he's been studying. And after his studies in this like new form of magic, he has thus gone forth on his travels with his mentor, because one vital part of this kind of magic system is not only what is written down, but also this sort of oral tradition that you just have to witness to understand.
The thing that I also wanted you to communicate is the just the existence of Sky Bloom, which is a giant, it's like ethereal flower in the sky.
It's a giant, huge flower that every now and then will either send down seeds or pollen, and in the places that these seeds have touched down, these rites can happen.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So I had the giant flower in my mind.
I feel like that makes it informed more a lot of ominous,
things.
That it's kind of like choosing.
Yes, it is terrifying to me. I don't know why the idea of a giant flower, like something that's in the sky and it's bigger than the moon. You know,
like it's not also like
it's not actually bigger than the moon, but it's a lot closer.
Oh yeah, it's a lot closer. It's not attached to anything. It's just floating in this. It's just floating in the sky, slowly. I feel like it has the
same sort of like ominous feeling as the like baby face in Teletubbies. You know, it's like this kind of like.
Oh, okay,
yeah, this like.
Oh, like the sun.
Yeah,
the sun, the
baby
that
face. Should not seem to be like. Intimidating, or should not like emanate kind of ill intentions, but then the actions don't like reflect that sort of like expectation.
Does the baby
I don't know
in Teletubbies I give off that vibe to you,
didn't
Clarence?
know that was a whole arc in Teletubbies.
Greatly.
The Teletubbies are actually eldritch horrors.
It's just like a laughing baby. All of them.
Conceptually, yes, I agree, Clarence, but I think I mean, I certainly didn't feel
you don't get that
otherworldly
that
dread when I watched the Teletubbies.
I mean, he's definitely terrifying. But
anyway, let's get back to the story.
Anyways,
yes,
that definitely changes the tone for me.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So, I really like the exposition. I like what happens. I think that's certainly interesting in how we get exposed to this new world. I really like with how you characterize the knight, the Shirataki knight. And you like characterize him. He's like a stand-up guy. It seems like our main character has like met him before or something, and just like been like nicely impressed. He's helpful, and then he gets just lightning struck and murdered.
Yeah,
and there's such like callousness, I guess, afterwards.
And it was shocking. Like it's combined with the knight says, "I challenge you," and I was like, "Oh shit! Is the knight actually like?" This is actually like a sneak attack or something.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be like a large battle, and suddenly he's just dead.
Yes. And it was like, no, that was expected. Not only was him challenging the god expected, but that the fact that he's immediately dead was also expected. So.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, when I was kind of coming up with this idea, I don't know why, but within this world, I wanted to add like a strange dungeon raid part to it, right?
Okay.
To where, or just like how, because also with it being just something cool that I like to write, I kind of think it also in the sense of a RPG. And I was basically thinking, well, how would one get these kind of mythical items beyond like finding them, like, because all of the mythical items would probably come from this giant flower god. And I thought, oh, what if they challenge this flower god, they get items, and each challenge is different. Like this one just happens to be them getting struck by lightning.
And if you survive the lightning, you get the thing.
Yeah, exactly. But I know I came up with this other one where basically once you invoke the rite of challenge, stone statues will come after you. You know, just certain things that you have to get over to get this item. So
cool.
Oh, I like that one too. The stone statues.
I think I was a little confused as to what the challenge meant. Like, I wasn't sure if like everyone gets struck by lightning or just this guy. You know.
Yeah.
So that was it, but I got it by the end. But it was something that I was like just not sure about.
Okay. Specifically, like, so when the like onomatopoeia happens. Was it clear in a sense that there was a lightning strike, or like what else could be done there to kind of bring that across?
Not that. No, like I got that it was a lightning strike, but particularly when you explain that there's one after that.
I liked the onomatopoeia part too.
But it was
it had that like it had a nice like succinct auditory like thunk to it, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
What I was confused by was not the fact that there was a lightning strike, but that like that it's the challenge is to survive it rather than that there is a lightning strike or not. Like I thought it was like Skybloom just decided to strike down this one particular person and then it wouldn't for the next one, except it did. The one other little thing is, so you're talking about comparing it to RPGs, and I think the stuff that reminded me of RPGs actually really detracted from it. Like it was the only parts I was like, I don't like that, which was
okay. What? Yeah.
The one that I like latched on at the end was, and this is such a tiny thing, but I like it. It does a lot. I think is the last line. There are many chants and statuses one could put themselves under that make even the smite of a god little more than a static shock. The statuses just reminded me of like video game status effects, and I was like, that's It's just like. It just immediately turned it from like chants, which is like, oh, cool, ethereal prayers, it's like mystical stuff, to like, oh, this is just like a button you click in a video game, you know?
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
And I just found the video game part like less interesting. But I mean, I'm just to say that like I prefer the other parts more. But Clarence, do you have something you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I really liked the kind of like in the middle bit where the like more like knowledgeable speaker is like thinking about the I guess like the interaction with a god and like the concept of what it means to like challenge a god. Which I think I liked that, where it was like it was nicely integrated. I thought that there was this kind of like philosophical wondering at the same time as the more like, you know, action based, you know, the rites were occurring and like all of that was happening, that in the back of your mind you were kind of like, why do we do this, you know, like why do we choose to challenge this deity that we know will, you know, challenge us back, I suppose.
Yeah. And definitely, as I was writing it, I was a little worried about trying to at least get a breadcrumb of that idea across, because I know it's definitely something I want to explore, and it's definitely one of the main reasons why I decided to even think of the rites, right? Is because if there's this god in the sky and you can directly like communicate with it, like where does the meaning kind of come from that when you decide to challenge it, right? So I don't know. I definitely wanted to explore that, and I probably will if I do go further with this idea, but I am glad that it didn't seem like it detracted from the story.
Yeah, no, I liked it. It gave the rest of the scene like a different sort of feeling than a usual sort of like interaction of like deity and like, you know, individuals would have.
Yeah, I liked how the focus on objects is like it's a material thing, and it kind of leads everyone to like not care about each other. Like this person dies and the next person is just like ready to go up and get their thing, and everyone was just super happy when this person has like gets a ring, rather than like any, like we don't see why one person deserves it over another. And I thought that was an interesting take on this kind of weird religion. Yeah, and maybe how that reflects on its people, and stuff like that.
Yeah, the disregard for like the knight that died. I think the disregard for his body by the people was more shocking, I think, than his actual like lightning strike death.
Right. And it's like we don't know what he did to like deserve death, or like they kick his body away of like, you idiot, right?
And I feel like it's an assumption of like deities are fickle, and it's you don't really know what they're going to do, and it's kind of this expectation for if you don't totally please them that you could die. But like there's almost an assumption that there is like kindness, or that there will be kindness between everyone else who are all kind of like trying to reach some goal to please the deity. I don't know, it was very interesting.
Yeah. And I know because at first I wanted it to be a lot nicer, because I kind of see them that they're all going towards a similar goal. But then I kind of thought about it, and if all these people believe so desperately in this god that they can physically see, when someone challenges their god, it would, in a sense, invoke anger too, along with a understanding. So I don't know. I kind of want to see where that idea kind of goes. But yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see more in this world. That's the main thing. I want to see more of what happens. I want to see if the main character grows up, and the stuff with the chants and stuff. It almost, that the scholar survived where the knight did. It almost seemed like you just have to like know how to do it, and then you do it just fine. Like it's not it's not like a random thing. It's not if you deserve it or not. It's like, are you literally like protected enough when you go and physically do it? So I thought that was interesting. If you were to rewrite this piece, what would you change, Jarvis?
If I were to rewrite it, I would want to spend a lot more time with not only the Shirataki knight, but also the monk guy.
Sure.
More so because I just like the image of a knight dressed in all mushrooms.
Yes, I thought that was cool too.
But even more so, on the side of the monk, I would like to add a lot more to this character. Simply because if they were to win the rights, I would want there to be something that you can physically see as to why they actually won the rights, or at least a small explanation before Al-Him kind of describes it to Al-Shum. So I guess those are things that would change, and I would like to kind of work on the ending. I feel that the ending is very like meh, right?
It's pretty close to satisfying. I think it just needs to like linger for like a little bit moment longer or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It cuts off pretty quick, so those are things I'll work on mostly.
Sure. All right. Is there anything in particular you feel you learned? If you say no, I'll just cut that question.
Well, as I said last time I wrote in this world, I learned that I enjoy writing in this world. I don't know, it's just a huge sandbox that anything that my mind can kind of come up with, I can hand fist into this world and it will make some sense. So I don't know. I guess that's
kitchen sink.
I guess that's the only thing that I kind of learned from it. Also, I learned that I write best in the mornings.
Oh. I forget how to read in the mornings, so that's a fun little twist.
Wow.
That's terrible.
Okay. Anything else we want to say before we go on? Nope. Okay.
I guess not.
That's fine. All right, let's talk about me.
Yeah, Matthias.
So I wrote the story. I wrote like 300 words of it in the middle of the week while it was raining. It was a really nice writing situation where it was a nice drizzle outside, and I had music that also had rain in it playing on the big TV, and it was just me, and I had a coffee, and it was nice. But I could only get so far. Indie. Yes, very indie. And today I finished it off, and I think it works. It works all right. So I don't feel too bad about it. But it's not exactly super adventurous either. So, but anyway, I shall begin. This story is called A Chance Encounter in the Garden. She had been in the garden when the storm struck. It was pouring, and while the willow tree was enough to block out the sun, it wasn't enough for the rain. Fat droplets ran down the hanging branches to plop cold down her back and arms. Beyond the willow tree, the rain poured much harder, and a light mist obscured most of the garden. The flowers looked different, huddling under the rain. The dirt flowed off the flower beds into little rivulets that joined into a thick stream down the garden path. She couldn't feel the tear stains on her cheeks, so that was one benefit of the rain. She shivered. The roots were hard where she sat, but there wasn't a lot of other places to go. She'd have to go home eventually, but they were going to be mad at her for being gone. She shivered as a little gust pushed the back of her dress to cling wetly, coldly, against her spine. She pulled her knees in tighter. "What are you doing here?" She startled. The gardener boy was standing just out from under the tree. The rain poured on him like he didn't even notice, so his hair, short and black, was plastered to his head. His dog was next to him, sniffing something in the puddles. It didn't seem to care either. "Aren't you cold?" she said. He was positively soaked, head to toe. He was only wearing that flimsy linen long shirt and trousers. After a moment of staring, she realized he wasn't even wearing shoes, his toes subconsciously digging in the muck. He just cocked his head. "What?" She raised her head and said louder, "You're standing out in the rain. Aren't you cold?" He shrugged. "It's just rain," and walked under the eaves of the willow, standing in that shelter from the pouring rain, but not from the water dribbles of runoff. He seemed to notice that the willow only did so much to block the rain. "You're soaked too," he pointed out. She bristled for a moment at that, for some reason, but it was true. Her dress was weighty around her. She was a little bit glad for it, though. At least the layers meant it wasn't see-through. "I got caught out in the rain," she said. "How did Miss Theodine get caught in the rain? I thought young noble girls weren't supposed to be out in the stormy days." He flopped down in the dirt a few feet from her, watching his dog bounce from one puddle to another. He didn't even try to sit on one of the roots, content to sit in the mud. For a moment, she was startled at him getting so close, but he seemed content to stare at the rain. Thunder crackled in the distance, but it was far away. How should she answer? The truth was, he was right, by the implication. She really hadn't been supposed to be out. But, she breathed out, "I couldn't stay inside. Too much yelling." The moment after, it seemed the air was thicker, harder to breathe. He nodded at that, and didn't immediately reply. The rain continued to fall, whooshing for a moment as a gust swept it all to one side, then the other. Half the garden stones were underwater, drowned and obscured by silt like old ruins. A leaf, curled into almost a cup, swept by on the little stream that curved around the willow's mound, before being caught at the edge of a root. It was pushed back and forth as the wind created little ripples on the water's surface. "What about you?" she breathed, smoothing out her dress. It just pressed into thicker wrinkles, stubborn. He didn't turn his head, but she could see him break into a toothy grin. "We're out snooping for frogs," he said, pointing at the shaggy mutt. It bounded over at the motion, with a lolling tongue. She wondered how it could see out of the mop on its face. "Any mess we make out here can be blamed on the storm," he finished. His smile fell, and he turned to her, worry apparent on his tanned face. You're not going to tell, are you?" She laughed long and loud, and the weight seemed to dissolve in the rain, the tension letting go of the cold, if for a moment. Wind loosed a spattering of droplets onto her dress, and the wrinkles fell away. She shook her head. "No, I won't tell." "Good." He pet his dog, seemingly unaware or uncaring of how the strings of fur clung together in a slick and sticky way, and how the scent of wet dog would cling to him too. The dog settled in between them both, and she drew in her legs to make room. They sat there for what felt like a long time, even though it probably wasn't. The rain pattered away, producing a continuous white rush of soft noise. The stream trickled on, still tugging at the leaf caught on the root, while the wind rustled the branches overhead. She pet the dog, and while it did feel oily and clingy, it was nice to grab, and the dog was happy to feel her hand. For a moment, the gray sky parted, and warm golden light fell somewhere far away. The leaf was brushed loose from its catch, an orange boat, setting sail, waterlogged but happy, around the willow tree, gently bobbing on the water on the garden path, before disappearing behind the bushes. "Well," he said, getting up abruptly, "those frogs aren't going to catch themselves. I better get going." The dog got up too. She stopped herself. She wasn't even sure what she wanted to ask, plotting a course forward without knowing her destination. She said, "Could I come with you? Looking for frogs?" She sounded so uncertain. "Are you sure?" He cocked his head again. "Your dress will get dirty. Last time I got a gentlewoman's dress dirty, I got in trouble." "Well, you won't be the one getting it dirty. I will." She got up, and the dress was heavy, and tried to keep her down, but she folded it up so that her legs were free, like she had when she was younger. They'd still be mad when she got home, but the damage was done. They would be mad that she came home soaked and late, so how much worse would it be to come home soaked and late and dirty? "Let's catch some frogs," she said, determined. She stepped over the little stream, into the blowing rain, and she hardly noticed the difference. And that's the story. Clarence, you are muted. I don't know if that affects anything.
Okay. Well, Matthias, that was a fantastic scene that you painted.
Yeah, it was so lovely and vivid.
Really? Okay, good. That was what I was focusing on.
It was.
I could definitely feel it.
Good. So the two things I was focusing on trying to do is just to create a nice, pleasant scene, and this stuff with the rain, because I feel like a lot of times I go too fast and I don't focus enough on like moments. Instead, I just describe all the scenery and stuff happening, and so I just wanted to just let moments kind of happen.
Yeah. Well, definitely slowing down, I guess, really lets us as the audience just chew on every little bit of it. And I love how you slowly revealed more about the scene as it went on. And I don't know, like it was just like great brushstrokes on an already really solid painting.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just really allowed us to not only get the scene, but also these characters and like a strong sense as to like just where they are mentally based on how they sit in this area. So I really liked it.
Okay, cool. I was actually also meaning to play a little bit more, and like I kind of went a little bit tropey, and you know, the rough poor boy and then the gentle rich girl and they meet somewhere in the middle. It's tropey. I meant to subvert that a little bit more, but then I just finished the story and I was like, you know what, I don't want to rework a bunch of stuff. So
it kind of reminded me of like a scene, like one of the beginning scenes of a like YA novel.
Yes,
in a sense, like, ooh, this is the person that she will meet, and then that's where the rest of the book is, right?
Yes.
But
it felt like the beginning of an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In retrospect, well, not in retrospect, something that I was thinking about halfway through is that I think it would be fun if the boy character was just a poor girl. And I think, like, there's no romance in this. There's, like, one sentence, like, maybe winking at maybe romance, maybe, not really. And so it's like it doesn't cross her mind, and it doesn't seem to cross his either. So it's like, you know, it doesn't really matter is what it is, basically. I could have made them whatever. Anyway.
It's very much like there's like youthful abandon.
Yes.
In the moment, even though you know that they're there's so much more going on outside of this one encounter, which I think makes the encounter so much more warm and like kind of comforting. And you know,
because like in a way it feels like this encounter shouldn't happen, right? How like they're both living their own separate lives, and it's just happenstance that they're both in the same place at the same time. But by them being here, it feels like it's hinting at this greater adventure. Also, with her going with them to go and hunt frogs, like I don't know, it seems like the great stepping stones for something that's very enjoyable to read, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sure, yeah. There's a lot of other stuff.
It's very like Frog and Toad, you know? That
sure,
sort of,
yes.
That kind of color palette.
Yes. That's a, Frog and Toad is, for those who don't know, is an old picture book series.
Yeah,
it's very cute, and it's just two English a frog and a toad. They're both English, and they just like have little tiny, very calm adventures, as in like they go fishing or something.
Yeah, it's very like low key.
Yes. Yes. No, that is exactly kind of what I was aiming for. Yeah. One thing that I intentionally was doing is I had a bunch of like intricate like ideas of like what the situation might be like what is the situation at home, what is their relationship outside of this interaction, you know. I had a whole thing where like, oh, he actually goes to a bunch of like, he and his father work on a bunch of gardens, not this one, but she thinks that he only works on this one, and because like if she doesn't see him on a day, she's like, oh, that's your weekend, you just don't do work on that day or whatever, but he's actually doing other work anyway. So none of that made it in there, and I'm kind of really okay with it. Partially because I didn't actually like have a solid understanding what I wanted to do, and also like just like leaving it for the imagination I think is fine. Like you can picture what her troubles are, you know.
Yeah, the ambiguity I think is good.
Yeah, because I feel if there was a lot more specificity, it would definitely kind of muddy this one scene, right?
Yeah.
One thing in particular, like in the beginning, I intentionally made them kind of not actually respond to each other. Like, that each line was like a little bit non sequitur, like a little bit, like related but not really. Like if I actually just go through me. Aren't you cold? It's just rain. You're soaked too. I got caught out in the rain. You know, like they're not direct answers to the questions. And it just kind of like the actual questions don't matter themselves. It's kind of like what they're trying to communicate to each other. I don't know, something about that.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Because like I can cover a lot more ground if but by giving an answer to another question that wasn't asked, right? It's like I'm answering two questions, and like you can fill in the in between, right?
Yeah.
That's and it's also, I don't know, it just feels more literary, I guess, to not have them actually answer each other's questions. So, yeah, that's what I was kind of aiming for.
Yeah, it kind of like loosens the like tightness that sometimes people get stuck in when creating dialogue. Is that there isn't enough movement.
Yes,
because they feel like they must build every single step. But I think that kind of not quite answering, I feel like that leaves it open enough to to have that fluidity. Yes.
So the next question is, how did Miss Theoden get caught in the rain? And then she doesn't go like, oh, well, I left the house because of, you know, there was bad stuff at home, and then I just like stayed out too late. But no, it's just I couldn't stay inside, too much yelling, right? And that implies like a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And we don't.
It's
get
saying
stuck
so
in
much
details
without saying anything at all, and I think that's not only is a really great way to like zip through a lot of the muddy that dialogue can be, but then again, it's setting this tone so much.
Yeah, and I think it, and then it like it gives more of her feeling than if I described everything, you know? If I had her say exactly what was going on, like, it's, you know, she doesn't want to talk about it, it's weighty, this is like an admission already, like, hard enough.
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of stuff already.
Right after the description of how, like, the air suddenly seems, like, thicker and harder to breathe, I really liked that. Because I feel like it's so hard to, like, convey that, like, immediate, like, panic that, like, tightens your throat when you're like, I could fall apart right now, you know? That I feel like you captured that really well.
Okay, I'm glad. Yeah, I was trying to convey that, like, just saying that is hard enough. And so, like, she was afraid that he was gonna, like, press her on it.
Yeah.
And that he doesn't even say anything at all. I considered having him be like, oh yeah, my dad does too, or something like that. But that was another thing where, like, I just felt like that the moment just feels a lot more of a moment if I just don't have that. So, and then it let me describe some rain stuff, which was fun.
It's always good to describe the rain.
How much of it is actual intentional metaphor that actually affects the story? Who knows? You decide.
You know.
I mean, hey,
reader response.
Yeah, you're definitely flexing your pen, so that's good.
Yes. Is the leaf her? The leaf that flows in the stream, is that her, or is it someone else, or is it just a leaf? Who knows? So yeah, that's what I was trying to do here. So
if you had, like, a second chance, right, just to go back through it, what would you do, and, like, what would you add to it, I guess?
First I'd make it longer.
Mill.
Because there's, I think I don't want to dive into details, but I do want to express what's going on more. I like what my structure is. I really like her saying what her thing, you know, why she's out in the rain, and it being a really tense thing. And then maybe she can talk about it a little bit. Not the particulars, maybe, and that's where a lot of the meaning can come from, of, like, how to deal with family, you know, or what pressure she's dealing with, but whatever. And then having all that tension broken when she says, what about you? Why are you out here? And then he's like, frogs. I just like frogs, which is great, I think. That feels weird to say that this thing is great, but, like, I actually do really like what this character's doing. I think it's fun. So, yeah, so I think that basically, you know, keeping the structure, but just, like, filling those out to have more intentional meaning, which is pretty standard for Do the Right Thing, I feel. What I learned, I think I'm a little bit better at having these breathing moments, of having, you know, I don't need to just, like, continue the dialogue. I can just stop the dialogue, have a whole description of a thing, and it'll be fine. And I think I'm just going to try to do that even more. Maybe in the next story I'll have, like, 6 lines of dialogue, but each one has to be, like, 2 paragraphs apart or something. So, we'll see.
I like that. There's a lot of things that you can do in the moments between answering a question and posing it.
Yes. Because it's not like we forget. I think I've described this before, but I have a really hard time figuring out how well people remember what is in a scene and what's been written. I think I always underestimate. Yeah, I always think people have already forgotten. I have to remind you of it, but it's like, no, they're reading it. It's not. It doesn't just disappear as soon as it's not in that paragraph, you know. Yeah. So, stuff to work on. But all right, we can move on to the next story, which is by Clarence.
Woohoo.
So, Clarence, is there anything we should know before we get into your wonderful story?
I don't know. I feel like there's no names.
Okay.
Or, like,
I like
the
that.
people, they have not been attached to, like, identities, I guess. They're just kind of people.
Yeah, that works. All right.
Yep.
Well, can't wait to hear it.
Okay, I must find it. All right. Bed thoughts. The stairs creak and groan outside his door. The knock is sharp and short. It is his mother. here to awaken him late in the morning. He will not answer at the door. The hinges are silent, but the rush of air as the door swings open is audible even beneath the pile of covers under which he remains buried. The blinds snap as she pulls them up to let in the midday sun peeking through the clouds for a moment. The stormy weather has abated outside, instead taking up a steady drumbeat against his collarbones and a dull ache in between his temples. Still asleep? It's not even morning anymore. Your father's already made you coffee. Admonishing. The guilt laced into her voice threads its way into his stomach and tightens around his gut. He pinches the fat of his hip to counter it with pain. He does not respond from the safe enclosure of his bed, hoping she will leave without peeling back the blankets. No luck. He should not hope any comfort, and an empty stagnation should remain stable for long in this house. She yanks the covers off his prone body and leans in close to his face, her hand close to his mouth. He lies perfectly still, awaiting her assessment. Are you breathing? It is not a question for him, but rather an often voiced fear of hers. Every day she enters his room to make sure. Sometimes in the night she will awaken in a sweat and dash up the stairs to check. Is he breathing still? Is he still here? He knows it is because she is afraid, because he has made her afraid, because his cousin has made his aunt afraid, because others have died in the night. How can he alleviate a fear he daily fears he will realize? It's okay, Mother. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. She feels his breath on her hand and sees the rise and fall of his chest. He can hear her breath slow as she carefully tucks the covers back into place and walks out in staggered steps. He hates that the trust of breath and life has been so broken, so damaged between them. The lies that come so readily to his mouth now feel like darning thread, sewing his mouth shut. She does not believe him anymore. He turns the music back on, the warped warble of the singer's sorrow pulling his body into imaginary motion, body poised to extend toes and flourish fingers. I wear my body like a rotten peach. His boy's bite marks have long faded, his scent just an echo on his skin. His body feels unbound in the world he has made, small and controlled in his bed. If he stays here long enough, it all begins to feel unreal. His cheeks heat with shame of what he has said, what he has done. Was he mad to really think it was all true? They sat in the 50s cafe, and he talked for hours to a boy that did not listen. He lay on the boy's stomach later, stuck in his head, alone. Does he love me like he says? You don't have that great of an imagination, you damn fool. Of course it all really happened. He awakes a few hours later to the smell of banana muffins. This will be the third batch of 60 muffins his mother has made in the past week. She's frightened and restless in the house. His father clears his throat in a 3-step rhythm that echoes up from the breakfast table. His sister's laugh carries on underneath, tinged with the leafy orange of hysteria. Their presence is burrowed into his skin, crawling around his ribs and down his thighs. Even beneath the deconstructing weight of the blankets, he is not alone in his head, and he resents it, this lonely not solitude. Another ribbon of guilt runs up his spine. The night before, his mouth would not shut up, and the cruelty that sits contained and hidden in the crevices of his brain oozed out of his aching head. You inhabit domesticity, Mother. I do not know you, Father. You have made yourself naive, Sister. Shut up, shut up, shut up, you dumb, entitled piece of shit. He knows the thoughts are his own, even when delivered by the sharp-tongued boy he imagines beside him. How desperate for touch is he that he welcomes the berating bastard in his head into his bed. Bones buzzing, back aching, toes icy. Nowhere to go, but body begging to escape. Leave, leave, leave. He knows if he does, they shall come collect him, and never let him out again. His body condemned, he remains beneath the covers, like a pea forgotten under 1,000 mattresses, dried out, crumbling and cracking, purpose unfulfilled. Silly boy, you thought you had it all figured out? Okay.
Oof. Ow.
So very strong is this story, and I
love having you on, Clarence.
It's quite a lot. I feel like I always bring, like, really, like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, you have 20 weeks in between. If I'm sure if you did this weekly, your stuff would be much more shallow.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I feel like there's like added pressure because it's just I do a lot of like writing. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of like I don't ever show anyone, and so now that like I felt myself much more conscious of how I write when I know that you guys will be listening to it.
Yes, read over and what a wonderful reading. That was delightful. Yeah. You should do that more often. Yeah, no, I love this. I love this very much.
Honestly, I like not only love the description that you have throughout, but the moments when you dive into this main character's head is just put so wonderfully, and we can perfectly understand where their head is at, and just this mixed emotion that they have towards what's going on, and then the overall want to like leave. So it was put so perfectly. Yeah. In a sense.
Yeah, it feels sick in a really, really good way.
Oh,
like really well written way. Like it feels this boy is clearly like sickly, as in like it's in the worst throes of depression where like you can feel yourself kind of wasting away and disappointing everyone, but it's not like you can just knowing that does anything. And I think one of the stories we're going to talk about later, one of the listener submitted stories, is somewhat in that as well. And it's in this really beautiful, like it is the feeling of kind of not being in control of everything, being uncomfortable and not dealable, and people trying to help, but also you resent that because it's like they're only making you feel more guilty because they're not actually it's not going to succeed in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's beautiful. In the latter portion, I really love the the part where he like lashed out the night before. Not that the things that he says aren't true, but that they're not right to say, and he's kind of like dissociated and thinks of this other boy saying it, even though he knows it's himself, but also he feels it's not himself. And that kind of cruelty and that other kind of sickness is inside and with him at all times and makes him not alone. And anyway, I'm just going off and just like I'm just explaining what you've done here rather than actually.
No, it's good because like coming from it, I always worry that I like don't explain enough of what I write.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to like hear how you like are reading it from the other perspective.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking at random paragraphs and I'm like, I want to pull everything out. From the father's 3-step clearing of the throat that echoes up from the breakfast table, and how like kind of far away it is but also present, and like how it's another reminder of like come on down, but everyone knows that he won't or doesn't want to or can't. The "Are you breathing?" is in the beginning, where the mom like checks if he's alive because he just like can't bring himself to respond. Is that hurts?
Especially since I heavily related to that, because I know growing up, and even up until I was in like senior year of high school, my mom would do that.
Yeah,
she would come in and just put her face as close to mine as possible to make sure that I'm still living, which I don't know, I guess that's just like I guess that's, maybe it's a mother thing.
Maybe it's just like a maternal thing where they're like
that like deep worry to where you have to check.
Well, I didn't have that in particular.
Oh, well, lucky you. Do you get a good night's sleep?
I definitely have had. I can't get out of bed. That's not in the diminishing sense at all. That's a serious problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get down to particulars so we don't just continue. Just say how we love it in all of random ways.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
I had to switch around some stuff.
No, that's fine. So one thing I like in this, and you've talked about being unstuck in time a little bit, but this kind of meanders in space and time quite a bit, or not a ton, but like a little bit. So we start in the morning, right, and then we meander to in the memory through the memory of. It sounds like he's gonna wake up, right, because she's pulled off the covers.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he's gonna wake up and go downstairs and stuff. And then the music comes on and we remember that boy that he was with, right, in the diner.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes to he awakes a few hours later to the smell of banana muffins, right? So we don't know. I wasn't sure if that was the same day or a different day, and that's not a criticism. That's like, I think that's okay not to know, because we don't get a part where he like fell back asleep or
that's true.
And then of course then we go back to another night before, and then we're back in bed with that boy, the other boy, the sharp-tongued boy. I really love the also the final well, I actually let's actually focus on the structure. Sorry, I'm jumping around even more. So Jarvis, do you have any thoughts on this kind of structure as well?
The structure of it?
The chronology of going from these different time periods and kind of sliding in from one memory to another.
When it comes to the structure, I really, really loved it. Mostly because it went through the important point to the important point, and I didn't really feel anywhere where something wasn't necessary or it was lacking at all. It was definitely this streamlined story that just kind of cascaded through these multiple moments in their life.
All right, good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like
go ahead
too disconnected, because I worried that it kind of gets
like
there's not enough like movement, I suppose, or like acknowledgement of the like temporal movement.
Well, I feel like this kind of thing is like the kind of feeling that you're trying to evoke is a kind of feeling of like not feeling in the moment, right?
That's true. That's
always being in these memories and not realizing that now is now, kind of.
Yeah.
The only thing that I was like, the part with the boy in the diner, where I was like, I like sliding back to that and then sliding back to more of a present, but I didn't quite grasp the like, not relevance, because it is relevant, but like it did feel more tangential than the rest, because so much of it has to do with the family.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Maybe if there was more to connect, like it feels like it's
like
a whole different section, or just
also,
like more connections, like
if that scene itself was like filled out in a sense, as of what you're saying, if it had a deeper connection to the rest of it. I mean, I enjoyed it greatly, but I can see how it does feel, it has a different tone to me. It feels separate from the rest of the piece. So feel and like a small change can just tie it all right back in.
Yeah, just like if the family, disapproves of this, or if they're wondering why that boy doesn't come back anymore, did something happen? Just something to connect it to the rest of the
to, like,
feelings. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But I mean, I really like the, does he love me like he says? Did I imagine this? And of course you didn't, idiot. But also that fear doesn't go away.
Yeah.
I also... I love your language so much because it's so like particular and like not standard, but also it's very you. You know, you use phrases like "damn fool," and it's like, which is evocative of an older time period. But the stuff that you write is not. Yes, the fact that you don't even know this is chef's kiss perfect. Yeah, so it's evocative of an older period, an older tone. Of, you know, like I get images of like writing letters back and forth and a lot of stuff like that, but it also just works in this, and I think you certainly earn it, even though because it is like your entire voice, it doesn't feel like put on.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like out of place.
Yeah, do you know where that comes from? I know that like this is a question
of
I'm
my
asking.
Being?
Yes.
Why do I speak like this? I really don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I feel like I've kind of adopted so much because like I spent most of my childhood like reading, and a lot of it was like, I mean, I read contemporary stuff too, but I feel like I read a lot of old books, and that was where I found the most like connection, I guess. And there's just like such reverence, I suppose, and like attention to the words in those like older texts that I feel like, I don't know, I do a lot. I relish in the way that it all fits together, you know, in the way that like particular words like taste together, and so I suppose they just kind of like worm their way into my vocabulary.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's evocative of that older time period, but it's also not of that time period, and it's recognizable as not of that time period. It's an interesting mix. And what's interesting is it doesn't just feel old, it feels a mix of a particular time period and this, right? It feels like a mix of like, I don't know, 1830s and this in modern era.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
honestly, just like, it's just such a benefit, right? Because like I love reading it. And just the way that the words connect to the next one not only makes it for easy reading, but it just, as you said, the attention to every word that you put on the page makes everything that is read more tangible and like chewy in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that is for sure is that it's so hard to tell what is the difference between what is just like a description and what is like a mental state in your stuff. Which is great. That's a good thing. Like, and you know, you have these like parentheticals and brackets to break things up, but it's like, I'm just gonna take out a completely random line. Also, another thing that doesn't carry across in audio is that you don't capitalize your first letters at all ever of a sentence.
I feel like this time, like since we last like gathered together and spoke about writing, I feel like I've become much more like aware of when I use all these like parentheticals and like, you know, like the parentheses and like the colon versus semicolon, all this. Like I feel like once you like pointed out that sometimes like there was that sort of like more inconsistency, I feel like I've like been more aware of it.
I'm wondering if you use a capital letter in this entire thing, because I don't think you do.
I don't think I did.
When I skimmed through it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that is, you know, technically not correct, but it works fine. It's interesting as like it turns every period into a period, but also into a comma.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's from breath to breath. You know, like he can hear her breathe slow as she carefully tucks the covers back into place and walks out in staggered steps. He hates that the trust of breath and life has been so broken, so damaged between them. The lies that come so readily to his mouth. Like the periods just separate thoughts, but they don't necessarily like punctuate them. Or something. I don't know exactly, but there's definitely there's an effect there, and I think it's great that you're exploring that.
Yeah, I like the idea of like being able to create a rhythm in the way that it's like read, and I feel like when I don't capitalize it like kind of establishes that from the beginning.
It's very poetic.
Yeah, quite.
I think basically anytime you kind of break the rules of standard, you know, of standard English, that kind of starts leaning towards the poetic.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Just because, I mean, what is poetry but like, no, like prose with a bunch of rules broken and a bunch of different rules. So
yeah, it's
so
hard. I feel like that line between like fancy prose and like poetry is just, it's so like porous, you know?
Yes. Yes. So I would say, if you're a listener, try experimenting with different stuff. Clarence just does it automatically because he's a genius, but we can put on airs and try to get to that. Yeah, one last complete random. I was reminded of this. So on emulating older styles, I listened to another writing podcast. It's called Writing Excuses, and it's got Brandon Sanderson and some other authors. I know that's probably disrespectful to the other authors just to call them other authors, but Brandon Sanderson's the only one whose books I've read. So, but one of them is Mary Robinette Kowal. She talks about she wrote something that was like basically a fan fiction of like Pride and Prejudice or something like that. I'm being probably pretty. I'm not remembering this correctly at all, but an older novel, and the entire novel she writes in this older style. And what she did is she actually pulled out some quotes from that older style, like from the book that she was emulating, and she just like reused the line. And every single time her editors would be like, that sounds weird, don't do that. Like, as in, like, that doesn't fit the tone that you've created in this piece, even though the tone is almost indistinguishable from that time period. Like, if you read it, you might think it's an older piece, but it's like it does lean a little bit modern enough that every single time she put an older line in, it plagiarized it right on purpose, because you can do that. It was different enough that to be noticeable. So it's weird.
That's really interesting.
So
yeah,
I don't know what episode that was
about,
on,
like the way that we construct sentences. I feel like changes. It's so like recognizably different.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's odd.
But I would definitely recommend what Clarence does is to just read a bunch of stuff, and if you want your voice to sound like something, just read a bunch of that thing until it does actually do that. So,
and also you can just start writing as that author, and it'll do the same thing.
Steal their name, steal their face.
Yeah, you know.
All right. Anything else we want to talk about with Clarence's piece before we move on? Okay.
It was fantastico.
Onward.
Yes, I always enjoy your stories so much.
Yes, but good. I need to leave real quick.
Okay, another
BRB.
Little break. Oh man. Well, what the hell? One of my channels changed names, and now I was like, what the hell is that? I didn't subscribe to this. That's okay. Well, I'm also excited for talking about Worm Decomposed after this. Official title, because why not?
Yes. I'm very excited.
We gotta plan it out. We should do things sooner than later, of course.
Yes,
But it's gonna be fun. And you'll have to hear out my bunch of weird ideas of what to do.
Oh, I'm excited though. I feel like it'll be fun. I'm getting more excited as I go along.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun, especially after we do the first episode and after we read Arc 8. Arc 8 is awesome.
I'm so close to it.
Yes, you are. Yeah, no, it's gonna be fantastic. Yeah, it's also like you're getting into the most Worm parts. Like whenever I think of Worm, I think of arcs 8 through 15 ish.
Yeah.
Like almost always, that's what I think of. And I definitely think of all the moments after that, but that's the worm part.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I'm excited.
Sorry about that.
You're okay. All right, we're going to the listener submitted story section.
Nice.
So this week, we are going to talk about 5 stories, and of course, as usual, we're going to entirely spoil the ones that we talk about. So please go read them. And if you didn't get selected, don't worry. Every single time you write, your chance of getting selected goes up. So we're going to be going over stories by Zakatigi, Kausubalu V2, Captain Rhino, Mraxilus, and Haunt of the Heron. So if you weren't selected, go ahead and keep on writing. We're actually thinking of doing a new thing just to encourage commenting. I know Haunt of the Heron, as we actually did this episode, we talked about it in the Doof chat how we want to encourage commenting, and so they actually went and commented on every single story, I think. So actually, you have a comment now, Clarence.
Oh, I do?
Yes. If we go look at it. But you can look at it later. So yeah. So thank you so much, Haunt of the Heron, for going out of your way and doing that. And thank you to everyone else who also left a comment. And for the most part, people have commented on their own stories, which is really, really good. So we're not really gonna... I don't think there was a lot of cross-commenting, so we're not going to go out of our way to mention everyone. But anyway, all that said, I know I'm rambling. We're going to announce a new thing where if you leave at least 2 comments on other stories, we'll enter in your name a second time. So your chance of getting selected goes up twice every time that you write a story and leave 2 comments. Or you know what? Let's just say if you leave 2 comments, your chance of getting selected goes up. So like if you don't write a story one week, but you do leave 2 comments, you still get entered. Of course, you won't get selected that week because you can't. But the next time you speak, you'll have greater odds. Why not? Let's do that. That works, right?
That's perfect.
Okay, that's the rule. I'll update the rules thing after we finish recording.
Nice.
So anyway, let's get into the stories. So
all right. First up is Kausubalu V2 with The Maze Part 2.
Yeah, so this is the second entry. The last story last week was the first. In the first one, a main character, Tia, they're in a virtual reality game and they message with some other people, but they're in a sort of fantasy world with also drones and guns and stuff, so it's fun. They fall into a hole, and now they've gotten to the exit of the cave system that they're in, which is in a big arena. So this story of the maze is a big fight between the main character, Tia, who is kind of a small... creature with a tail, but also some drones to use, and I think a Tesla gun, which is fun. As they fight off against this giant millipede boss monster. Mm-hmm. So there's some cool fighting where they have to figure out how best to do it. Basically, they're using these drones to like attract their lightning from their own gun because it can't really be aimed, and so but they're taking damage while doing it, and it seems like they're going to lose until finally they stumble on or they figure out a really good idea. They bait the millipede to attack it directly, which is its weak point, the head of the millipede. And they throw a drone right on it to its face, and then they because of that they're able to aim the gun and shoot it and do maximum damage. And basically, with their final health points, they win, and then they go through to the exit, and it's a nice mountainside garden. It's very beautiful there, and there's a chest there with some cool stuff. So.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great world building. It's only building on the world that has already been made. And I definitely love how a lot of these kind of like RPG-esque elements are really being brought to the forefront in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was pretty well executed. There was only some parts. I think what Zakatigi experimented with was having these kind of one-line action paragraphs where it's just like it's an action and it's just kind of to imply a lot of things with just one word. So it's like it's a section which just goes dodge, rush, right? And I think it didn't quite work for me, where I was actually more confused in those sections because I couldn't see what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what they were doing, right? Trying to take these very complicated actions and putting it into the simplest of terms. And I feel that something like this can work, but after the movement of these things have already been established, right?
Yeah, I think I just would have liked it more if it was described, but
I feel like the motion that it creates, this kind of like back and forth, I think is established. I think that does come over well. I think it's just we need like maybe like a visual glimpse at the same time, so it's like dodge, something happens, dodge something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like somewhere to like land as we're like moving.
That's a good point. When they're by themselves, I think it's I just wonder like if they were in one paragraph with description. You know what? I'm just gonna back what Clarence said. Having some description. Dodge the the legs like whistled by her face. Dodge. She rolled under the carapace of as it reached for her. Rush, and then we get the next description.
Yeah.
I think that would have worked really well. The only other criticism I want to just talk about, which is I think it's just inherent to any time you write about RPGs, is just like I don't know what the stakes are, right? I don't know what happens if she dies.
Yeah. If they get respawned,
so that was like, I mean, it's just inherent where like the real stakes is probably like nothing much, but that's like boring to hear. And I don't know how to solve that problem. So
I think the easiest way to really solve it would be to watch Sword Art, right? And just write that.
Well,
I mean, okay. Say I don't think you could, say what you
Jarvis.
will,
I don't think you could
those
safely.
Stakes were top tier.
I don't think you can ethically recommend that anyone watch Sword Art online ever.
Here's the thing, though. I definitely can. Because yes, it's an older anime and there are a lot of faults within it, but to say that it's not worth watching, I think is a huge
It's worth watching with the understanding that it's not good.
Well, no, like here's
and
the thing,
it does not deliver on its promises.
What is it about?
One of the first, if not the biggest, fucking isekai TV show out there, would spawn a whole genre. So I feel it is necessary watching to a certain extent.
So basically, Sword Art Online the anime premise is everyone gets in this video game, it's the beta testing, and then the creator of the game is like, haha, you're all trapped in here. If you die in the game, you die in real life. The only way to get out is if you beat the game. And it's a cool premise, and it's got some cool characters, but then the actual show, every single episode is filler. There's like 2 episodes of plot, the first and the last, basically.
Well, okay.
And then the second part of the first season is like about incest, and it's like not good.
Ooh,
all right,
yikes.
You're not.
And in that one, you don't even die in real life.
You're
so
not
it's like
even describing this correctly.
Was there a movie that was like that too?
The Matrix?
Was it The Matrix?
The Matrix.
I feel like it was a kid's show.
Ready Player One is like that. There are a lot of
Digimon
Digital Monsters.
Spy Kids 3.
Oh yeah.
Game over.
Yeah, that's probably the one. Yes. Anyway,
but no, you should definitely watch it.
Don't.
Hey, listen to your big brother Jarvis. All right, I will never steer you wrong.
It's not.
All right, I'm telling you this right now. You have to watch that and then watch Log Horizon.
Okay, if you watch Sword Art Online, just like only care about the main character and the main girl character, because no one else matters at all.
Oh.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit.
No one comes back in any episode. Everyone's just one. Anyway, okay, we spent way too long on Sword. See, this is what Sword Art Online does. It ruins everything it touches. Anyway, I really did like this action scene.
Yeah, it was very dynamic. I really liked it.
It was very dynamic. It was just fun. It was a lot of fun, especially problem solving with the main character. So I really enjoyed this, and I actually I found it very satisfying when they won and they got their stuff, and I was like, ooh, blueprints to a mecha millipede. That's fun.
Yeah,
mechapede. That's cool.
Well, all right.
So
moving on.
Let's move on.
The next one up is Captain Rhino, which is titled "Searching for Truth."
Yes.
Right.
This one.
This is the one I was when we're talking about your story, Clarence. This is where I was kind of talking about. Yeah. So it starts off with confusion, sweat, panic, darkness, and we have these horrible descriptions of what this woman, the main character, is feeling. My heart is fighting a lion. My legs are melting into goo. My head is being attacked by the symbol monster. And so, to kind of bring herself back into awareness, this woman goes through a bunch of questions about herself. She doesn't open her eyes. She asks, what do I know? I'm a woman. How do I know this? What is my name? How do I know this? Etc., etc. Kind of going through these basic facts about herself. And we understand, in the very beginning, we're like, oh, what's happened? Is there action or whatever? And then we quickly understand, this is just
like within her head.
Yes, and it's like a horrible thing that happens to her with some regularity. And so she goes through a bunch of these questions, and until she can open her eyes, or she feels that there's a presence next to her, and it's a person, and then she realizes that it's Peter, her something. It's husband, or does it?
I don't know if it says.
No. Her something.
Yeah, her something.
They love each other.
Her something.
She really loves him and doesn't understand why he loves her because, there's so much wrong with her, or that's what she feels. And what these questions she's able to do is ignore the questions that are not supposed to be answered. Like, why does he put up with ugly, stupid, damaged me? Mm. And she kind of debates with herself. Captain Rhino in a comment, says that they were debating of whether or not to have the mean thoughts be in italics or somewhat separated. But I agree with their sentiment in the end that it came across better when it was just the same narration, just going back and forth, and we could. But it kind of devolves as it goes into one paragraph of her normal thoughts and one paragraph of her bad thoughts. Mm-hmm. But we can definitely tell that these are two different tracks. But the same, without any differentiation, which I thought was really well done. But it ends with finally opening her eyes, and Peter's there, and he's already ready for her. It asks, shall we answer the questions together? They get out pieces of paper and they both write down the answers to the questions, and they show each other just to make sure that everything is true. It finishes with, my name is Peter O'Connor. Your name is Harriet Greenwood. You are beautiful, clever, and kind. You are not damaged. You are ill. You are getting better, and I will help you as much as I can. I love you. It's beautiful.
So beautiful.
And it ties together with so many things that, went on through the piece. And I'm motioning with my hand, going down the piece, the names was a thing. Beautiful, clever, and kind is kind of what she calls him. Being not damaged, being ill, those are things that she talks about. It's great. It's really well done.
Yeah, it's well done. It's such a tight piece, really. Everything is working towards this end. And I don't know, I just really love how much of a purpose every aspect of it has, and it's building on top of itself, and it is slowly pushing us towards the very end, which I thought was beautiful and the most satisfying ending we could have possibly asked for with this. So,
man, I feel like also the Captain Rhino talks about in the reflection of it being stream of consciousness. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times people think of stream of consciousness being really verbose and really kind of long and meandering, but I feel like this kind of tight back and forth of like self against self, I think is also like a really good way to like do stream of consciousness, and I think that they illustrated that really well. That kind of like back and forth.
One tiny criticism is Krakathum. The first about midway through, there's a light that's turned on, and it's accompanied with an onomatopoeia of Krakathum, and it just seemed out of place. But other the whole piece goes towards this very specific tone and feeling, and so
then there's
I think that's. Yes, which is of course not congruent with the rest, which I think is actually, it's good that like you can notice that, that the piece is coherent enough that like that does stand out and is weird,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just one little thing. But I love the voice of the evil thoughts. There's a big section where she talks about all the justifications and how Peter helped her and stuff, and it goes, the voice goes, Peter, 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 sounding very needy, and it's like there's a whole character there.
Yeah.
And then that voice like continues in another section. That's the problem with hearts and minds. They get all screwy, tell you things that aren't true. You can't always trust them. They're liars. And she, in her own voice, is debating back about what love is, and anyway, there's a lot to like in this piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that much else to say about it other than to say I really liked it and you should go read it.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Captain Rhino. And next up would be Haunt of the Heron with Severance.
Who again left so many good comments on all the stories, which is lovely.
Bad 90.
So this is the sequel to their first Do the Right Thing story called Stranger, which we did also cover. In that one, there was kind of a giant being, an angel, a mutant angel is kind of what it felt like, with many legs, that defeated a bunch of mutants, and we got a lot of world building. But this is set in the same world. It's not with the same person. This one's called Severance. And so, with this, we have this character named Eric, who is, in the beginning, fighting a Leviathan, and, which is a giant creature. I think the beginning is a little bit confusing exactly what's happened, but, basically, at some point, she hits the ground, and everyone's been hit by this, like, wave of something, and now there is this giant wave of, heavy, gaseous blood, which is expanding out from the corpse of the Leviathan. And all around it, in this giant crater where the Leviathan was, are these trenches and like makeshift fortifications and stuff. Very like a mix between World War II and like medieval, or World War I and medieval. So it's interesting in that way. And all these mutants have been fighting over the corpse, basically fighting each other for the corpse of this Leviathan. This Leviathan is finally dying after it's been damaged by everyone, and now this toxic blood is washing out and mutating everyone who is caught in the cloud even more. And so the main character, Eric, is trying to run away. She's already pretty damaged, but eventually gets to one of her allies. She grabs one of his tentacles, wrapping around her arm, her only human arm, grabs another with her beak. So we get a lot of like implications of description, and she's kind of like half snail, half avian, half human. And so she helps her friend get out. She's afraid of losing her humanity. And then at the edge, she looks back and she sees someone that like kind of helped them. She doesn't have that much attachment, but she could potentially save them. So we get how much of a hero she is, because she dives back in, even though it's a huge risk to her, huge risk that she might lose the rest of her humanity. And her and the guy, the other mutant, are just barely, they're like crawling back, basically. Their pace is described as like a stroll, basically, as this cloud gets closer and closer, and she realizes it's going to envelop them, but only for a few seconds, if she continues, but that could be enough to like alter her so much that she's not human anymore, like mentally. and so the one that she's carrying asks her to like just kill him and run, but she doesn't, and they make it through, but it's to a huge cost, so we don't know how big the cost is. She's going to get hugely mutated, and maybe she might like lose the part of herself that decided to go out and save someone, but she's alive and she did save someone, so we're kind of unsure exactly what the costs of this are going to be, but we still applaud her for doing it. Long description because it's a long story in two long parts, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great sense of world building. We really get into this character and how much of a kind of hero she is, and what might be lost.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, with it being so long, I think something I really have to applaud Hans of the Heron with is that, like, I never really felt that moment when I wanted to, like, stop reading, right? Because just reading it through and through, even though it is a extended piece, is written very well. And these characters that are within it time is really taken with them, in a sense, to where you get a stronger sense as to who they are throughout it. So, yeah, I don't know. I love reading it.
Yeah, I feel like there was, like, immediate, like, you know, immersion, I guess you could say, into the story. Yeah. That there wasn't time where you kind of had to, like, settle yourself down into it. You were, like, already ready because you felt like you were, like, connected to them already, the characters. You know what I mean? Like, the movement, like, it didn't take too long to, like, already have that sort of movement.
Yeah. My one main criticism here is just going to be a lack of clarity, particularly in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, where especially at the very beginning, I wasn't quite sure what was going on. But once we start running and we're running away from the monster, from the wave, things get a lot more clear, much quicker.
Yeah.
And then the only question I have left is like, what does this main character look like? And like once we get the arena, it's not so bad.
Until much later, right?
Yeah. So I think just putting that earlier, I think would be hugely helpful. Like once I got it, I think it was a lot easier to understand what was going on. You know, they had one arm. I don't need to know about the beak until you mention the beak, right? But I need to know the potential of a beak, right?
Yeah.
And like when she grabs her friend, that's like, I think a little bit more description. It doesn't necessarily need to be in particulars. I don't need like a paragraph of like he was 6 feet tall and had a bulge over one arm and 6 tentacles on. Like I don't need that. I just need to know that like, is he like red and blobby, right? Is he big and tough? And then when you say tentacles and stuff, I can use that description to color the rest, right? I mean, Hunt of the Heron was worried about their descriptions, but I think it's like once we got them, it was great. It's just I needed them earlier, I think.
Yeah. The actual descriptions were phenomenal.
Really solid.
I think that's why I like bought it so much at the beginning. It's like, and I know it doesn't have that like immediate clarity, but I feel like just like the immediate like images that you're like given at the beginning, you're kind of like,
yes,
it feels very much like you were in the moment trying to process what's happening, like as everyone else is also in this kind of chaos.
Yes. Like I mean I like the flesh roiled beneath oily black skin, seething ocean of tar, vast and dark and unknowable as the place it had descended from. Like that's delicious. Awesome. For me it was just like in the next couple of paragraphs, she's, you know, attacking it. But I was like, are they on the ground?
Yeah.
Are they in the air? Just the basics of like physically where in space are there? You know, how are they going to move through the space, stuff like that? Because once they started running, I know what running is, right? So I could get the rest, but yeah. All right. We could go on forever, so let's go on to the next story.
The next one is by Zakatigi, and it is named With Eyes Unclouded.
In this story, which the Zakatigi talks about how they've been watching a bunch of sunless skies and sunless skies and sunless seas, which are to video games where there's horrible monsters and a lot of eldritch unknowable things. So this is not necessarily a fan fiction of it, but something that fits in those worlds, perhaps. So we have this character. This character is reflecting of how she's never been one to believe her eyes, and summarizing this is a little bit difficult. So we have this character reflecting of how she's never been one to believe her eyes. And not believing her eyes is actually really important in this world where there are dead gods returned and oaths to forgotten spirits. So she was born on this port between civilization and the depths. And one day a horrible creature we which embrace, which is such a great eldritch name, right?
Oh, it's lovely. I love that so much.
Yes. And it came out of the ocean in a stormy afternoon. At least that's how I understand it. And she just like looked at it and just like didn't believe it. One of the greatest eldritch terrors, and she just like didn't believe it. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but it seems very powerful. And so, you know, she apparently, you know, when she gets drunk, she talks about how it's kind of like an accident. She's not actually that special. But many other people like see something like that and have their eyes like burned. And so now she's in the ocean on her ship. The chittering eyes and mouths of devouring, which is the same thing as we witch embrace, prides itself for the place between the waves. Kara Gris Inkstone, that's her name, hunts these horrors down, thanks to her past self who didn't die when she looked at this horrible thing. And so now all of her crew ready the harpoons, and she sees with eyes unclouded and yells fire. And so we have, you know, she's a Cthulhu hunter basically, which I thought was really, really cool, to say the least.
I mean, this is definitely like right up my alley. Like, this is my shit. I love like an eldritch horror so much, and I think this is like really handled very well. Like how there seems to be this slow creepness throughout it, and like I don't know, I just really love the world that's not only being set up, but the implications on what could possibly happen after. So
I feel like the concept of like having seen a monster in one's childhood and then returning as an adult, knowing the reality of it to kind of fight it, I think is something that can be like taken on really well, I guess, as like individual stories, or like personal experience sort of thing, I guess. But I feel like that story, like sitting within this kind of like more ethereal, I guess, setting, I think I really like that, because I feel like the power that she wields feels even like greater because of that. I don't know. I liked. I feel like perhaps because I didn't quite know the background of it, I feel like the way we kind of like walked into the like plot, I guess perhaps was it wasn't as clear as I thought it would be, I guess. But once I kind of like knew what was going on, I liked the concept a lot.
Yeah, by the third paragraph, I think we start really understanding what's going on. Especially once we get to the ship and we understand that this is the scene that she's reflecting from. I think it's for me, it's a lot of like, I wasn't quite sure if the girl that originally stares at these things is actually her, and I think it is, but it's talked about in a way that makes it sound like it's not her. And so I was like confused. That's the connection, and also particularly like what it is about seeing it as a child. Like, is it just like, did other children see it and they were scarred like the adults, or is it is it that she's particularly special, or is it just that like she happened to see as a child and that's all you need, or is it some combination? And just basically what makes things be the way that they are. And once I have that, I think I would understand a lot more of what makes Kara so strong. And so, you know, why does she see with eyes unclouded, you know? And like what it is about the cloud of believing that makes these things so horrible. One little thing I thought was interesting, I don't know if this is intentional at all, it's probably not, but the only italics in the text is there's only 3 things italicized. There's we which embrace, an eldritch being, devouring, which is an eldritch being, and her last line, which is sees with eyes unclouded. So I was like, is that a touch of the eldritch as well? Which I thought was an interesting idea. I don't know if it's intentional, but I like it nonetheless.
Yeah,
either way.
Or she can kind of like take on this sort of
she is
same sort of power
eldritch
that they have.
Yes. I mean, with eyes unclouded sounds
that's true.
Eldritch
Yeah,
enough to me. Yeah. Just connect them with dashes, and it's a eldritch name.
Dash just put a couple of G's up in there. That's a god.
Why not? But all right, so I really did enjoy this, even if I didn't completely understand what's going on. I just, you know, that particularly that line, eyes unclouded, is just fascinating, and I love the names of. I loved all the eldritch stuff. That was a lot of fun.
So. Yeah. Well, all right. Up next will be Miraculous with the cut rope.
Yes. So this has 3 people in a cave on a cliff. It is kind of revealed over time, but one is pacing around in circles. His name is Greg, and he's kind of freaking out, and he's getting mad at his companions, mad at Joe, who's been very quiet. And he's just trying to blame stuff. He blames Joe, but it's not like actually her fault, and they lost their 4th companion, Rich, until finally the old man, the 3rd person in there, says to focus and calm down. Greg, he doesn't respond. He just gets like lost staring out of the cave, out of the cliff into the rain. And so the old man just talks to Joe and tries to calm her down. Says, you know, it's not her fault that Rich is dead, and that they'll live. There's rescues coming in the morning. It'll be a matter of time. But he's lying. He's just, you know, trying to comfort them and keep them calm. But it's implied that he dies sometime after that. He lived long enough to know that pretty soon the 3 of them would be condemned to the same fate as their fallen brother. And Greg, who's staring out into the rain, knows that too. So, not a good end.
Yeah.
And I assume
that is a bad end.
By the title, what happened is that they were climbing and the rope was cut, and so now they can't go up or down.
So they're stuck.
Big fear.
Yes, with no supplies.
Yeah.
Honestly, I really love the dialogue. Like, it's written so well to where it is characterizing not only the character, but how they naturally interact with each other. And I like that it was used to like give us all of the plot points that we need, and also just take us through. Yeah.
I really like the ambiance of the cave. Like I could just really feel that it was really small and not dark. Like it's only as dark as outside is. I could
like
feel
the kind of like echoing that they were talking about in it. Where it's like this kind of very contained echo.
Yes. It's like a shelter, but it's not a good one. There's still like rain coming in under the lip, and Greg's just staring out because he knows that's where they're going to end up. Yeah, it's real spooky, real dreadful.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of like lingering like regret, I guess. And kind of this like this like resentment, but like layered on top of resentment is like this like seeking of like not quite absolution, but like they like feel bad that they like resent each other. That sort of thing, you know, where it's like this kind of like wish for forgiveness but an inability to like give it. At least I don't know that perhaps I'm reading too deep into it.
No.
Well, I mean, that's part of the enjoyment. Yeah. I think for criticisms, I do agree a little bit with Marx's that like with the three different people, it's the characterization spaced out. I don't think that they should cut down the amount of people. I like that there's three.
I think it's good.
Yeah, I just like more time on each one. Yeah. I think Greg is pretty well described. I think Joe probably just needs even a physical description at all. But like I get, you know, the three different flavors of how they're dealing with this.
Yeah.
And I mean, definitely on that point, I feel that the only thing for me is just more, right? Like I would love for this piece just to be longer so that a lot of these moments can breathe a lot more. So then when the line does come where they will all realize their fate soon, it'll hit even more than it already does, in a sense.
Yes. But of course it's been written in 30 minutes.
Exactly. So maybe next time try 35 minutes.
That's not how this works. But okay, yes. So these were the wonderful stories we talked about this week. That's all 5, right?
Yes.
Did we do?
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you to everyone that wrote. So thank you so much to Miraculous.
Thank you, Captain Rhino.
Thank you, Kalsubalu V2.
Thank you, Haunt of the Heron.
Thank you, Zakatigi.
Thank you, Paradox.
Thank you, LucasOp86.
And thank you, Ghost Pac-Man 4. Thank you, everyone that has submitted a story. And thank you so much to the people that also commented.
Yeah, for the most part. Most people did comment on their own story, or except for the only person that commented on other stories, Haunt of the Heron. So I just want to give out the shout out to Haunt of the Heron. I think. Yeah. So I think going forward, what we're going to be doing is if you leave a comment on 2 stories, you'll be entered again. So that means you can double your chances. And that's in every category. So if you're a doof writer and you write your story and leave 2 comments, that means that you'll be entered twice into the doof writer category and into the general category as well. Even if you don't write a story and you just leave some comments, you'll be entered in again, which of course you won't be selected that week, but that's because you didn't have a story. So but the next time you do write a story, your chance of getting selected goes way up. So we're hoping this will encourage some communication. So if you want to, you know, have your story read, this is a really great way to do that. So,
yeah, exactly.
And leaving a comment on your own story also counts. So, you know, if you write a story and you reflect, and then you leave a comment on someone else's, there you go. You just doubled your odds. Yeah. So
2 tickets.
Highly recommend that. That's right. Okay. Anything else that we have to cover? We got to talk about do stuff, and then we'll find out next week's words, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, first and foremost, if you want to be like all of these people, and you got only 30 minutes to spare, well, you should go ahead and write a good old-fashioned story, and then drop it into our subreddit, which is /r/do the right thing.
That's right. I've also started posting our episode links there. So if you actually want to talk about this episode and not just do the story thing, but if you want to talk about what you liked, what you didn't like, commentary on our stories, on listener stories, you can do that there. Otherwise, if you also want to just let us know things, you can send us an email at rightthingcast@gmail.com.
Exactly. And if you want to get a look at those words as soon as possible, you can do that on our Twitter, which is @rightthingcast.
That's right. And now I almost always post them Saturdays, so at least I'm consistent about having it on that day.
Exactly. So, Matthias, what doof stuff is going on?
So much doof stuff. Of course, All Packed Up finished a couple weeks ago, which was a great episode. You should go listen to that.
Please do.
If you haven't read Packed, please do. The second story by Wildbow, it's fantastic. It's online for free. And then go listen to Deep in Packed, which just finished. They're also going to be doing a pilot season of stuff, which I'm very, very excited about. a whole, I think, 8 single episodes of different potential shows, and depending on feedback and how they feel doing them, they'll choose to do different things. Kingslingers is also exploding as well. So if you read any Stephen King, if you've read The Gunslinger or have been thinking about it, go ahead and go listen to that. Go listen to Scat. Oh my god, Scott and Matt go through The Gunslinger. And analyze it. They do a really, really great job.
They always have there's such like punny names for all of these things.
Yes. I mean, that's how podcasts work, right?
It's supposed to be.
I suppose.
Mm-hmm. The last thing I want to plug is that there's a patron reward coming up. Guess what the next one is? We're gonna officially talk about it because now it's officially time to talk about it on episode 50. Once we're currently at time of recording, we're at 362 patrons. But when we get to 375, we're going to be doing Doof Publishing. We're going to be doing a Do the Right Thing anthology. Of course, only if we reach the goal. So we do need the help to do that, and then we'll be looking into doing in a physical print anthology, as in printing the book and being able to, so that you guys can purchase it and hold the content that this community has created. I mean, it's super awesome just to hold something that you have made yourself. But it's going to be really cool. It'll probably have some writing from the Doof Squad, and some Do the Right Thing people as well. So we'll have a contest for that, like the Doof the Right Thing contest. So, but it's going to be really cool. And I'm very, very excited about that. So donating at literally any level at the $1 level will increase, get us closer to that as well. So, please do.
Yeah, please help us help you so we can all be super famous and rich together.
And make a Doof book. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, a Doof.
Anyway, I don't like that. Just the fact that we're headed to episode 52.
Yeah.
Episode 52
Coming up on a whole year.
The year-long milestone. This is episode 50. That's pretty huge. That's half 100. Oh my god. Yeah. But 52 is a whole year, even though we took a hiatus somewhere in there. And I think we're thinking of switching up how we're going to be doing this.
Yeah.
Which we haven't completely settled on, but go ahead, Jarvis.
Oh no, I was just saying we haven't completely settled on it, but we are definitely open to any sort of suggestions. I mean, of course, we do make this podcast not only because we love doing it, but for y'all, and we would love to kind of get some feedback as to where you think we might be able to. We might want to take the podcast. I mean, we've been thinking about maybe only doing one of our personal stories to kind of give more time towards the listeners' submitted stories and just certain things like that. But definitely, we are looking for that feedback.
Yeah, so maybe in the comment section on Reddit of this episode, you can let us know if you really like the listener submitted section the most, which I mean that makes sense. I also really love it. Or if you really like our stories, or if you have any suggestions of how one big thing is we do actually want to cut time, not just for the sake of cutting time like Scott does, but I'm kidding. But just this takes a lot of time to produce, and we're the shorter amount of time it is that we spend on the recording is the longer time that we can actually spend on every other section.
Exactly.
So,
also, we definitely just want to
stuff like that.
We want to spice it up. Maybe we can do more specialty episodes. Maybe we can finally try the do the edit thing. So after
maybe we should do that for episode 52.
Exactly.
We'll
after doing the same old from a year, yes, it's fun. Yes, we love it. But I think we deserve, as much as y'all deserve, a nice change of pace.
Sure. But all right, so just let us know. I think that's all we have. So let's find out the words for next week, Jarvis.
The words for next week are repair, humor, gorgeous, and utter.
So repair as in to fix something. Yes. Although I suppose if you really wanted to, you could twist it to be to repair something, as in to like pair something up again, I guess. I've never seen that, but you could. Humor, as in something that's funny or one of the four. I think the four humors
those are
spelled differently. the humors of the body, which is like blood and bile, some other stuff. But you know what? You use that if you want.
That's how it's spelled, isn't it?
Oh, good,
good. I might be thinking
I thought
of
it was like with a
humor.
U. Maybe it's the British.
Yeah, I feel
spelling.
like it depends on who you talk to. Plus,
probably.
writing back then, like, it wasn't.
That's true. Standard.
Because I
super
think
codified.
Where I read it, I was reading the Odyssey, and they had the word humor, but it was HUMOURR.
Weird. So, and then gorgeous, something being really beautiful, and utter, which is like an utterance, something that you say, or like, how do you say, what is the other definition of the word? Like an utter shock.
Oh,
like a complete shock,
udder.
I guess.
It's that fleshy part of the cow that the milk comes out.
No, it's not. Not that kind of utter. Not that kind of utter. Okay. Well, Jarvis, what story are you gonna write?
Next week, I'm going to write a story that's closer to my heart. You know, like all of this fancy stuff is great, but what about me, right? So I will dig in deep, and I will bring up the courage to utter the words of how I kind of got my sense of humor, right? It's something that's more so morose, not as palatable as other things. When I use it, I try and use it to repair certain bad feelings, but then again, I'm not that good when it comes to speaking or talking or being an average human being.
Right.
But I think that's what makes it so gorgeous about being human and about being me, right? Is that we can be multiple facets of multiple things, but there's only one of us, at least that's what we're told, in a sense.
Oh.
Okay, wow. That's good.
What a twist that was at the end.
What a twist. Okay. I'm gonna try to play matchmaker, and so there was this pair, this beautiful, wonderful pair, two people loved each other very much, but then they broke up, and now I'm going to repair the relationship by repairing them together. I'm gonna repair them together, as in pair them up together. She humorous, so funny, and made him laugh with every utterance. And he gorgeous and super hot, and they're perfect for each other. And I'm gonna repair them and make that relationship great.
Matthias, you're not making sentences.
What am I talking about? I totally did.
Matthias, you're killing yourself.
I did it.
You did it.
I did it. That's my story. Clarence, what's your story?
What are you going to write next week?
Okay.
Right now.
Well, I shall perhaps write a story of someone who cannot utter a word and must face the fact that this lack of verbal communication has rendered his relationships with his friends broken, and he must repair them with a type of humor that is unknown to him at this point, but he has to kind of like make his way in the world and, you know, sew everything back up together.
He's gorgeous.
Yeah, into a gorgeous, you know, succinct little life that, you know.
I think you just described a mime.
Yeah.
Yes, basically. Maybe I'll write about a mime.
You should write a mime as if it's the mime speaking, except the mime can't speak. So I just want a story that's just silent, so we can just kind of like imagine what's going on. You know,
I really like that.
That's a really good idea. Nope, that's not a thing. You didn't.
Well, also like
and then you read it and it's just silence.
Well,
on the podcast.
One crucial question that I do have, right, is that mimes. Okay, they have to go to school. They have training. They have their whole lives as a mime, and I'm not sure exactly how much money is in mimery, but the one thing that I do know, right, is that do the right thing.
That's not an ending, Jarvis. That's not an ending. It just ended, so. Okay, we're done. That's it. That's the episode, I guess.